It's remembered as the wettest Le Mans in history, and despite the downpour that lasted all but a few hours of the race, the 1995 24 Hours of Le Mans produced a lot of excitement and is one of my favorite races in the event's history. For most of my life, I've been in love with Le Mans. The pageantry, the history, the battles, the engineering and modifications that go into the cars, and the pure challenge of 24 hours around Circuit de la Sarthe. I have even spent countless hours dreaming of what it must be like to power a car down the Mulsanne Straight or soar through the Porsche curves. But one of my favorite Le Mans was the 1995 race. This might be because I'm a little biased towards the winner, but it's also because of how difficult and challenging it was for the drivers. Known as the wettest race in Le Mans history, it rained for more than 17 hours out of the 24. Le Mans is already one of the most challenging and dangerous races in the world. On a dry day, the rain only complicated the task at hand. The fan favorite was the Porsche-powered Courage prototype that featured a driver lineup of Bob Wollek, Eric Hellery, and sentimental favorite Mario Andretti. Andretti had won the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, and the Monaco Grand Prix, but Le Mans had just been out of reach. Even his teammate Bob Wollek had failed to capture a victory at Le Mans after 26 tries. Wollek had won the 24 Hours of Daytona 4 times in his career, but he'd never been able to capture Le Mans. The third and final driver on the team, Eric Hellery, was not only the youngest driver amongst the veterans, but the only one who had won Le Mans, which he did in 1993. Their competition, the McLaren F1 GTR. Entering the race for the first time in manufacturer's history, McLaren would arrive to the track with a production road car, a car that in 1995 would only cost you $1 million to own. The McLaren F1 was the fastest road car in the world, and so naturally Le Mans was the perfect place to demonstrate what it was capable of. The McLaren had already enjoyed success in the BPR Global GT Series, winning 6 out of the 7 races, but many wrote them off in favor of the prototype teams like Courage, Kramer, Welter, and Deborah. It was also common knowledge that the McLaren wasn't very reliable and was prone to gearbox failures, and to win the 24-hour race, you kind of need a reliable car. A small budgeted French team known as Welter Racing had gotten the weekend kicked off, scoring the pole for the home crowd. Both the PO-powered WRLM95s had locked up the front row of the grid, with William David being the first driver in history to score a pole at Le Mans on his debut run. But when the race got underway on a cloudy afternoon in June, the crowd was behind the Frenchman Bob Wollek in the third-place Courage. In the first hour of the race, it was all prototypes, with the WRs leading Bob Wollek. But almost as soon as the second hour began, so did the rain. With the rain falling, Le Mans started to claim her first victims. Massimo Segala in the Ferrari 333 SP was making excellent progress considering where that car had qualified. Segala had managed to get the Ferrari up to 4th until suddenly the engine stopped running at Arnage with an electrical failure. The rain meant an absolute frenzy on pit road as all the drivers made a dash for wet weather tires. Circuit de la Sarthe was made up of mainly public roads, which made the surface very oily in the rain and was causing several drivers to spin. Both of the leading WRs suffered lengthy pit stops for faulty windscreens, which put them behind and out of the top 5. The situation became more serious for the WRs when in the 5th hour of the race, Gonin aquaplaned and somersaulted into the barrier. The car was destroyed and so was Gonin, who had to be taken to the hospital with 4 broken ribs and a broken shoulder blade. During the safety car for Gonin's crash, the McLarens had yet to come to pit road, and that gave them 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, with Andy Wallace leading. The downpour of rain was playing havoc with many of the prototype teams. The WSC cars were at a serious power disadvantage. The second Courage team, with Henry Pescarolo behind the wheel, had stopped with a battery failure, and the Kramer was a handful to pilot in the current conditions. Even with the wet weather driving master Hans Stuck behind the wheel of the Kramer, he still put the car in the wall at the first chicane. While the prototypes were suffering from a slew of reliability issues in the wet weather, the McLaren was running well. And where many had believed that the McLarens would be plagued by failures, they were actually prospering in these current conditions. Mario Andretti had taken over for Bob Wollek and was in 3rd place. Andretti waited for the right opportunity to pounce on the 2 McLarens ahead of him, waiting for the notorious gearbox failure or just one of them to make a mistake on the wet and slippery surface. But the mistake wouldn't come from the McLarens. Andretti spun in the Porsche curve trying to miss a slower car and tagged the wall, breaking off the rear wing. Andretti limped the car back to the pit lane, lucky that more damage hadn't been done. The Courage team immediately went to work and got the fan favorite back out onto the track and back into the race. But Courage had lost 30 minutes making the repairs and were now 6 laps down to the leaders. When the sun finally set, the rain hadn't let up and now a thick layer of fog had settled over the circuit. With visibility next to impossible, the drivers and teams prepared for what was sure to be a treacherous night. McLaren would still be first, second, and third, with the driver pairing of John Nielsen, Jochen Mass, and Dr. Thomas Bashir holding the lead. But all that would change when a clutch malfunction would prove terminal, and they would be forced to retire from the race. This would hand the lead over to the sister car, the number 51 McLaren, with Andy Wallace and the father and son pairing of Justin and Derek Bell as the drivers. While other cars spun, failed, or pitted for repairs, the number 59 McLaren never missed a beat and was sneaking its way up the leaderboard. The number 59 had been considered the dark horse out of the McLaren teams, but Yannick Dalmas, J.J. Leto fought their way to third. As the race roared on into the wet and foggy night, the drivers continued to suffer in the conditions. No matter the talent level, everyone had spun or been off the track at some point. Dawn was a welcome sight, and as the sun rose, the rain slowed. With the rain easing off, the Courage was starting to get quicker and was eating away at the lost time on the McLarens. The race had been on for 16 hours, and yet the top 2 cars were still on the same lap. The yellow number 51 was currently leading with the young Justin Bell behind the wheel, but he had his rearview mirror full of the much more experienced Yannick Dalmas. Experience eventually won the fight, with Dalmas reclaiming the lead from Bell. The team brought the number 51 to pit road for a quick driver change. The youthful Justin Bell would hand the wheel over to veteran driver Andy Wallace. His task would be simple: catch Dalmas and get the lead back. And that's exactly what he did. Wallace charged down Dalmas and made a pass, soaring down the Mulsanne straight. After Dalmas was passed for the lead, he brought the car into the pits for a brake change. When the number 59 rejoined the race with fresh brakes, they were a lap down to Andy Wallace. But all that was erased when Wallace came in to hand driving duties to Derek Bell, allowing the number 59 to get back on the lead lap. Bell left pit road as the leader, but the team still hadn't changed the brakes on their McLaren, and it was starting to show. Bell was locking up the brakes into many of the corners, and the mistakes on the track were starting to cost him time. Now their rival was in sight of the lead. With 4 hours remaining, Derek Bell made a routine pit stop for service. When the stop was over and he went to leave, he couldn't get the car in gear. Furiously, he pulled at the gear lever, but the McLaren wouldn't budge. Finally, Bell found a gear that McLaren liked, and he slowly got underway again after a costly 2 minutes on pit road. With the rain finally letting up in the closing hours of the race, things had begun to look brighter for the fan favorite Courage Racing team. The race hadn't been the smoothest. The lack of performance and the handling in the wet conditions mixed with Andretti's accident had put them 6 laps behind. But as the Frenchman Bob Wollek climbed behind the wheel for the final shift of the race, he was now in third and only 1 lap behind the leading McLarens with a chance to win. For 5 straight hours, the 2 McLarens had been playing the fastest game of hot potato. Passions and frustrations were running high as neither one of the teams could break away with the lead. Yannick Dalmas made an aggressive move on Derek Bell that almost saw Dalmas go off the track, but the car somehow stuck and the number 59 was able to get back to the lead. Bell brought the car in for the final driver change of the race. Bell jumped out and gave the car to Andy Wallace, who would be making the run to the end. However, when Wallace went to pull away, the car again wouldn't get into gear, and this time it looked serious. While Wallace continued to sit on pit road, Bob Wollek and the Courage picked up second place in their come-from-behind drive. All the while, team captain Derek Bell was having to watch in frustration as the race win slipped from his grasp a few short hours from the finish. In the closing stages, the race had been handed to the number 59 McLaren, and in McLaren's first attempt at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Yannick Dalmas held on to bring home the win. For the 3rd time in 5 attempts, Yannick Dalmas had won Le Mans. Bob Wollek would bring the Courage home in second, after being 6 laps down. However, Wollek and Andretti would once again come up short of the win and wouldn't be able to live the dream of standing on the top step of the podium. Had it not been for Andretti's spin or the constant rain, who knows what might have happened. Maybe Wollek and Andretti would have finally been able to stand on that top step. But the story was all McLaren. A production road car had defied all belief and beaten the prototypes. McLaren not only won the race, but would finish with 4 cars in the top 5. The number 51 that had shared the lead through much of the race would finish 3rd, after their gearbox had taken them out of contention. Mark Blundell, Ray Bellum, and Maruzio Sandro Sala had not had an easy run with the GTC Gulf Racing. Their Le Mans had been full of spins, mechanical failures, and body damage, but they had fought hard and finished 4th. Hans Stucken team had come through the race to finish 6th in their Porsche Creamer prototype. It was a good Le Mans. It was challenging, the conditions were tough, and the racing was close. There had been surprises, comebacks, and underdogs. Since the '95 race, McLaren has yet to win another Le Mans, making it the last production-based car to win in the event's history. Winners Yannick Dalmas and JJ Leto would continue to compete at Le Mans over the next several years. Dalmas would win his 4th Le Mans in 1999, driving for Team BMW Motorsport. Leto would win again in 2005, during the Audi domination years, driving for an American team, ADT Championship Racing. Neither Mario Andretti or Bob Wollek would ever complete their dream of winning at Le Mans. Sadly, Bob Wollek would be killed in March of 2001 while riding his bicycle before the 12 Hours of Sebring. Mario Andretti eventually retired from racing and began a new life as a successful car owner. I'm Justin with NRN, and thanks so much for watching.